Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold.
Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ashley Ross from 321 Media. Dr. Weinhold, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this episode today to talk about how to raise an authentic child and all the research that I have done, and also research I've read that others have done about this. I'm going to be able to share the golden nuggets, hopefully, of all that.
Wonderful. So when we're talking about the beginning stages that you mentioned, that's about under 11 months, right? Anywhere in that
Well,
range.
actually, from the time a child, well, maybe you can go back to conception to when they are able to walk or at least crawl away from
Mhm.
you, where they begin to see that there's somebody that up until that point, the consciousness is that mother and I are one, or father,
Yes.
whatever they are attached to, they don't have a separation. They become that person and become that identity. But then when they start to be able to crawl away and walk, they can begin to explore the world away from that attachment. And the next two episodes, I'll talk about those two stages, first stage, and then the time when they start to walk and crawl and start to separate from the attachment. But
Wonderful.
first thing I want to do is try to get understanding of what needs to happen during that attachment stage. And I think as a, and you might be able to comment on this too, is that, and we talked a little bit about this last time, is that what I'm presenting is information if you're a parent. And even if you're not a parent, you went through as a child some of this. And so it'll be like trying to understand it from two different levels. If I'm a parent, what I can do and I shouldn't do, what I should do and shouldn't do to help promote and facilitate, authentic behavior in my child, my infant, and also what did I get? And it's very, very hard for a parent who didn't get treated as an authentic child to then also try to parent their child in the same as an authentic way. And so that's what this is about. It's about looking at it both from the standpoint of what did I get and didn't get that helped me or prevented me from being authentic, and then what can I do now with my child to be more help them become more authentic than maybe I was. And that's a big challenge for parents. You want to comment at all on that?
I can 100% relate to that. I think that's the biggest challenge with being a parent is it's not that we want to fix all the things, that went wrong, that our parents did wrong, because I don't think, that was an intentional process,
No, no.
But how to break the cycle, that like you've talked about next month, you're looking at the kind of the generational things that come with family. How to break some of those cycles that we identify as okay, this caused me to not be an authentic person, so how can I now fix that so that I don't pass that along again?
Exactly. So the buck stops with you. and that's hard because it means in the heat of battle, when you're in some kind of conflict or there's some kind of incident where you know you have to behave in an authentic way towards your child to model that behavior, you're still battling your inner demons about what happened to you when you're there at that age. As you were pointing out with your 8-year-old, that happens to you. And that's very common for parents. And to be at least aware of that, that that's what's going on, is that your children are bringing up a memory for you that's stored in your body of what happened to you at a similar age, or maybe in a similar situation. Maybe it wasn't the same age, but the situation is similar. So it's an opportunity for learning for parents. And so I always say, and I say this with great humility, my greatest teachers have been my children. They have taught me things about me that I wasn't aware of, and I became aware of them when I had to deal with them, and saw how it brought back memories about how I was treated. I remember probably one of the greatest lessons that happened to me was I was doing a workshop near where my parents live, and my son was I think he was maybe 8 or 9 at the time. And I said, "Oh, why don't you come with me? You could spend the time with grandma and grandpa while I'm doing my workshop." And it was a week-long workshop. And so and we went there a little early and stayed a little later. So he had about 2 weeks with my parents. And so when we were flying back, I said, "Well, uh, what was the things that you liked the most about spending time with your grandpa and grandma?" He said, "I didn't spend much time with them. I spent most of my time with my cousin, who was the same age." And so I thought about that. And, oh my God, that must be what happened to me when I was his age. They just didn't spend any time with me, and I either spent time alone or with kids in the neighborhood. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that never occurred to me that would have been how I grew up. I didn't remember my childhood that way, but hearing it from him, it brought the memory back clearly. That was what was my experience growing up. Was I was sort of in the way, and so they didn't do things with me. They didn't go later on when I was a teenager, when I was in athletics. They didn't go to my sporting events. They didn't do anything that involved my life. They were so busy with their own. And, I understand some of that, but it still had its effect on me.
I
So,
can see that a lot. My family never ate dinner together.
oh yeah, well, mine did
Mhm.
as best they could, but there was no conversation around dinner. It was about, let's get this over with as fast as possible. I developed something I call the fastest fork in the East. I grew up on the East Coast, and because the unwritten rule, unspoken rule at the table was whoever gets finished with their first helpings gets seconds, and there may not be enough seconds to go around for everybody. So hurry up and eat so you get seconds. And so I often left the table with indigestion, trying to.
I was gonna say that creates some bad eating habits
Yeah,
too.
I had to I had to really work on slowing down as an adult. Yeah. So today I want to talk about what are the basic needs for attachment and bonding that children are born with, and how to facilitate them meeting those needs. And I have a diagram that I'd like you to put up that will help me then explain it. If you can find that diagram, there it is. And it's mostly looking at what should happen and what does happen, and what to do about it. But I'll walk you through this diagram a little bit, and I want to back up a little bit and say that the the job of a parent actually starts at conception, and I believe that uh, uh, since fathers are the active part of conception, uh, they ought to be the ones that create a meaningful ritual about conception for uh, both parents or both prospective parents. And so that's the first act of a father, is to help create a conscious conception ritual, to bring a child into this world from the highest level of consciousness, not some accident. Over half of the children born in this country are either unplanned or unwanted. That shouldn't happen. It should be a planned and a wanted kind of experience. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, obviously, there ought to be good prenatal care for the mother, and the father should be involved in that, so that he can be a support when the birth comes. And the fathers need to be present at the birth and be part of the team that are doing that is there to support his spouse in this very difficult and very painful process. And so that's the other role that fathers have to play. That's extremely important, because anybody that's present at the birth of a child is automatically bonded to that child. And that's important for fathers to have that kind of experience. And then I also think it's important that fathers, if they wish to cut the cord. I don't know. Do you have any comments about that? You're shaking your head. Yes, I want to hear.
I tried to get my husband to cut the cord, but he's squeamish and he
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
that's the problem. A lot of men don't want to do that. It's just
No,
too
too much.
too real for them.
Too real, yeah, too
Yeah.
much.
But at least to be present is absolutely essential. And then uh, the uh, the research shows this very clearly, that the optimal time for bonding between the child and both parents is the first uh, 24 to 36 to 72 hours after birth. And during that time, according to the research of Klaus and Kennel at the Cleveland Clinic, they say it should be a maximum time of skin to skin contact between the child and both parents. That means being naked in the bed with your child on your chest, and having them feel you as well as you feeling them. That what that does, it activates brain cells. It's a great way to activate the learning capacity that a child has. And so hardly any parent knows that. And so that the research was so clear about that. I mean, I read that research. My God, more people need to know about that. How important that is, because they just don't don't really consider it important. And then in terms of the day to day, I have what I call the parenting wheel up there, and the child's needs are have to be consistently met in order for them to achieve a secure bonding. That means a lot of contact through either breastfeeding or bottle feeding, with the mother, of course, with breastfeeding, and perhaps the father involved some in bottle feeding, and making it again a team effort as much as possible. That may mean that if there's a, a bottle that needs to be given in the middle of the night, dad gets up and does that, and gives mom a chance to sleep a little more. And that first couple of months are crucial, because the child has to build a kind of a sense of trust and safety. And the way they do that is that their needs are met consistently. And so at first there's a equilibrium. The child doesn't have a need. Then the child starts to have a need. They may be hungry, they may be lonely, their diaper might be wet. And so the only way that children can express that need is through crying or whimpering or some making some sounds. Now, mothers who are really tuned in, and fathers who are really tuned in to the needs of child, they know how to distinguish between a hungry cry, a lonely cry, and a wet cry. and they can then basically get that need met in the appropriate way. And so every time the child expresses the need, uh, uh, he or she expects that need to be met. And if it's not met, well, let's say if it is met, then the child relaxes, and the nurturing, protective parent meets the need at the bottom of the chart there, and they relax. And then they go back to either go back to sleep, or they're playing in whatever way child's play or infants play is often a lot of peekaboo games and other activities that engage the child with the mother or the father. And so then when another need starts to show up for the child, they express again the need for that to be met. And so again, if the parent is available, knows what the need is, if it's a hungry cry, then they go and make sure the child is fed. And if it's just a lonely cry, they spend time with them. And so if over a period of time, like months, this is met on a consistent basis, the child starts to feel secure. They feel the bonding and the attachment with the mother and then with the father is means it's safe, and they don't have to be worried about their needs being met. And so if that doesn't happen, then people start to develop what is called oral addictions, substitutes for that. And one of them is thumb sucking, and others is they later on the addictions as an adult are food addictions, smoking, masturbating, drinking, or taking downer drugs like alcohol or marijuana. But basically, the main way to get that need uh, met often, I mean, another way that typically I don't have it on the list here, but another typical way they will find a a substitute for mother or father, and it maybe is a blanket or a toy or a stuffed animal. And so you the child figures out some other way to get that need met uh, uh, temporarily, but it's never the same. It's never enough to really uh, really replace the consistency. And so if children don't get those needs met on a consistent basis, they do fall into what is called the black hole. And interestingly, some of my people that I've worked with who work in emergency rooms, and they surprised me by telling that many people come to the emergency room and they say, "I'm in the black hole." I was shocked to find that out, that term sticks with people. And so and obviously my way of thinking about that is that they're experiencing some memory of some time in the past when they were in the black hole, and it feels very much the same, or it feels as frightening as it might feel if you have, because infants are totally dependent on their mothers and their fathers to get their needs met. And what the research has shown that if infants don't get those needs met, they die. It's a survival mechanism. Now, obviously, all of us got some of those needs met, maybe not all of them, but we got enough to get through and survive. I mean, the researcher Renee Spitz, way back when they found that in orphanages, these infants were dying, and they couldn't figure out why. And mostly it was because the infants were never getting any kind of human touch or human connection, and they didn't have the bonding and attachment opportunities that other infants would have, and so they died. And so what they did is they trained the staff to give them each of the infants more, pick them up and give them some attention and some connection, and the deaths all disappeared. So it is a survival mechanism, and it really does mean that uh, children have to have that kind of consistency. That's no mean trick for parents to pull off. Talk about that a minute.
I think that's something I struggle with the most. Is even now that I'm home, it's still difficult to maintain, trying to prepare lunch, and keeping him happy while that happens. And um, there are obviously steps like childproofing your kitchen and leaving, a few drawers with safe things to play with so
Sure.
that he can participate with the lunch making. But, you know, all of those things have to happen too. Like that, you have to do the childproofing, you have to prep everything and make sure that it's ready to go. And, but at the same time, sometimes they just want to be held and it can be a challenge to identify like you said before, am I spoiling my child or am I just feeding and nurturing the needs that they need from me? And
You can't,
society gives us
can't
weird
spoil it. You
cues
can't
for that.
just
You can't.
no, it's just not possible to spoil a child.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe later it could be.
Sure.
Adults are not giving them opportunities to do things on their own, and you become what is called sometimes a helicopter mom,
Yep.
helicopter.
Guilty of that one too.
But at that age, you can't spoil
No. And
them.
I think love, how can you give too much love, right? That's a
Interestingly,
silly concept.
a man by the name of James Prescott did cultural research on child rearing. Well, no, he didn't. He did it on violent cultures. He tried to determine what was the difference between a, a violent culture and a nonviolent culture, and he found two things. And the one that pertains to what we're talking about is in nonviolent cultures, uh, mothers carried their child on a sling in front of them on their body everywhere they went, even when they're preparing lunch and whatever they're doing. And that was a standard practice in that culture. And that was one of the characteristics that distinguished between violent cultures and nonviolent cultures. He got in trouble when he started talking about the second one because in nonviolent cultures, there's very permissive attitudes towards teenage sexuality. In violent cultures, there's very repressive attitudes towards teenage sexuality. And so he got in big trouble with that one, with many of the conservative Christians and people that believe in absence and other kinds of repressive methods of trying to control natural curiosity and natural hormonal development of teenagers. So, but the first one, I mean, how many? I mean, I'm seeing more of this when I go to the grocery store. I see moms have their infant in a sling right in front of them while they're shopping, and that turns out to be an extremely important way to accentuate that bonding because that child feels your heartbeat, hears your
Mhm.
heartbeat, feels you as a part of them. And for them at that point, that's the most important thing to have is that they know that, I mean, they literally believe that they are part of you and you are part of them. And so if you make them part of you by carrying them in a sling, you're really enforcing their natural kind of feeling at that age that that's what should be happening.
I think you're actually seeing a lot more of that. I noticed a big difference between when I birthed my 8-year-old to when I birthed my 1-year-old. Um, my first experience with birth was very traumatic, and he was taken from me right away. None of my asks were where I was able to take him and keep him on me were not honored, and I felt very kind of betrayed about the whole thing. But my most recent birth was the total opposite. Everyone in the room, the doctors, the nurses, I had a doula, supported the instant skin to skin and respected all of my wishes when it came to the birthing plan. And you're seeing a lot more of
Yeah.
just mom to mom talk of baby wearing, and there's a lot more even development into uh, not mainstreaming the baby wearing, but like trying to, make it cute and make it fun and make it something that moms
Well,
want to wear and make it comfortable and put a lot more care
yeah.
into that scenario.
Well, Frederick Laboyer wrote a book a long time ago called Birth Without Violence. And he was a Frenchman, and he outlined what the birthing room should look like, what the whole birthing process should look like. I mean, with soft lighting, music playing in the background, usually Largo music, which is about 60 beats to a minute, which is about what the heartbeat of the child is, and they can be brought into the world in a nonviolent way and in a peaceful way. And so hospitals have had to do that because many people chose to birth their children at home, depriving them of all that income. So that's one of the factors that has driven that. And I've been a member of the Pre and Perinatal Psychology and Allied Health Association, and they have promoted I think it's called I don't know if it's a mother friendly or baby friendly hospital practices that hospitals need to follow if they want to be not accredited, but recognized as a hospital that does different things that are not the usual things that they do in hospitals. Which, I mean, even inducing labor because the obstetrician has a golf date and he doesn't want to miss that, or the crazy things like that can have a huge effect on the whole birth process. And so they've helped educate the public about the needs of mothers and of babies at birth that many hospitals have long ignored. Even the whole issue of circumcision, which the American Pediatric Association has said for the 20 years ago, there's no medical reason to do this, and yet uh, it still happens quite frequently. And some of that's for religious reasons, but most of it is just because of ignorance. They don't understand the effect that the circumcision has on the baby. It's a trauma, and the baby remembers that no matter if they are anesthetized. And earlier on, they didn't even anesthetize babies when they circumcised them, because the prevailing belief was that babies don't have many feelings. They can't feel that much pain. The opposite is true. They experience pain more acutely than adults do. And so a lot of significant harm has been done in just that area of circumcision. And I advise parents to really think very carefully about doing that. I have an image that I show sometimes, and it's called a circumcision box holder, and it's a circumcision board, and it's a board that they strap the baby to when they when they do the circumcision. I mean, why would they want to strap a baby that doesn't have any feelings? Obviously, the feelings are with extreme pain, and they're flailing with their arms and legs, and so they strap their arms and their legs to this board while they're performing the circumcision. So I think there's a lot of things that we're now learning about that bring us into the 21st century about how to birth babies and to do it in a more humane way. I mean, even I know a couple that did birth both their children in the bathtub. Water births are quite common in some places, and they're not as common here. But I mean, it's birthing the child from a water environment into a water environment, and so it's the most natural transition that you can make in a birth process is from water to water. And actually, my massage therapist is a baby who was was born that way. I knew the parents before she was born, so I knew her before she was born. So anyway, those are kind of the things that I'm wanted to focus on. That, and the next episode we'll talk more about what do you do when they get old enough to start crawling and walking. That helps promote this sense of authenticity. And the most important thing for the first stage is consistency and to be able to show up. and to be have as much contact, either bodily contact or just interaction with the child, playing, making face games, you know,
Mhm.
or peekaboo, or any of those kind of activities that tell you, I mean, that the child is engaged with you in something meaningful for them, and every contact with you as a parent is meaningful to them,
Mhm.
both positive and negative.
Yes. Yep.
So it has lasting effects, and we need to realize that it's not something you forget about. And in fact, it's pretty clear to me that, and the research shows this, that whatever attachment style you develop in the first 9 months, that's the pattern for the rest of your life.
Mm.
It doesn't change unless there's some awareness brought to that, or some
Mhm.
intervention through therapy helps parents realize, or not parents, but adults realize that they're carrying an attachment pattern from their infancy, and they're trying to now apply it to their adult relationships.
Which is why this parenting part is so important, right? We need to do it better.
Yeah. All right, we've been over a little on time today, but this was an
Yes.
important topic. So,
Thank you so much for the insights, and I'm looking forward to hearing how next week goes.
okay, good. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.